Hey there everyone, my name is Sedge and this will be the first video in a series designed to teach beginners how to script Lua on Roblox to create their own games and whatever they wish. So without further ado, the first thing you're going to need is Roblox Studio itself. This is where everything happens. If you don't have this, you really can't do anything. So when you first install Roblox, this should come with it, but if it doesn't, make sure you have it installed and the logo will look like this on your computer screen. So go ahead and double click and you should have a screen that looks like this because you presumably have nothing created yet. Ignore all this, we won't need this for now. These are just some presets that you can use if you have an idea for a game or you want to maybe take something from one of these games, but we're just going to go to base plate for now just to get a layout of Studio. So what you notice is I have two things on my screen. I have properties and I have Explorer, and if you don't have those, go to view up here and hit Explorer and properties, because you're going to need these two things all the time. They're pretty much on my screen 95% of the time when I'm making a game. They're very important. So what is properties? What does this mean? And what is Explorer? Explorer shows you every child of game. A child is essentially just what's inside of something else, and game is everything. It's the entire place in Studio. Workspace, the first child here, is the physical world. It's the base plate and anything you put in it. Players, obviously, is players. Lighting influences the time of day, the sun in the sky, the shadows, everything like that. Replicated first is what you use if you want a model or a decal or something to load before anything else, which is really useful for making loading bars, loading screens, things like that. Replicated storage is handy. It's where you can store models that you want to clone in the future. It's useful because both local and server scripts can access it, and if you don't know what that is, that's okay. We're about to go over it, so sit tight. Server script service is a nice place to organize all your scripts. Server storage is kind of like replicated storage, but only the server can access it. Starter GUI is the player's GUI. It's where you're going to make all your menus, screens, things like that that the player can see and interact with. Starter pack is your backpack when you first join the game, what tools it comes with, etc. Starter player has the scripts for each player inside of it, for their character and for their player, which are two different things, and we'll go more into detail into that later. Sound service, chat, localization service, you really don't need to worry about these at this level. So that's what each thing in the Explorer pretty much does. So the first thing we're going to do in Workspace is add a part, and you see I just clicked the little plus button, typed in part, and there's different kinds of parts, but we just want this for now. And if you see, this properties menu has just populated with a bunch of different properties for a part. So this can be overwhelming at first. It looks really technical and confusing, but as you go through it, it really makes sense what each thing does. Obviously, brick color is the color of the brick. You can change this to whatever you want using a color wheel, or if you have the hex ID of a color you want, you can manually edit it to whatever you want and change it to whatever color you want. You can change the material, you can change the reflectance of light, you can change the transparency, you can change the name, the orientation, which is like its angle in the workspace. You can change the parent. Now, the concept of parent is very important in scripting. Oops, did not want to do that. A parent essentially allows you to find an object that you're looking for. So the parent of this part is workspace, and the parent of workspace is game, but we'll go back to that later when we first start scripting. And as you go through, you see there's a bunch of different properties that you can edit. Now, these properties can all be edited via a script. So anything you want to do to a part, you can pretty much find in here and in the Roblox wiki, which is very useful if you have an issue with the API, which is the kind of database of properties you can edit on a part or any instance in the game. Then the API has it. Just Google Roblox wiki and you will find it. It has a lot of useful information there that I still use to this day. So we can go ahead and reset this part to the way it was. I'm just doing Control Z. New part. We can kind of ignore that for now. Now the first thing that you can do is make a script, and like I said earlier, there are two different kinds of scripts. There's a server script and a local script. Now, a server script is going to allow you to affect anything server side. So in the game, the physical parts, things like that, anything in server storage, player values, things like that. And a local script, if you want to add this, and yeah, see, that doesn't go in there. A local script can't go in server script service. So typically when you make a local script, you're going to either put it in replicated storage or you're going to put it in your starter GUI. And it looks like this. It has a little image of a person on it. And a local script essentially affects things on the client side, which is the user side. So things like their GUIs, their player values, which is stored in players here. If you make, money, things like that that are stored in the player. So knowing the difference between these two is pretty important. But for now, all we're going to do is focus on the server script to edit things in the game and pretty much do whatever you want, aside from edit player GUIs. So, and by the way, if you don't know what a GUI is, it just means graphical user interface. It's where like all your menus, your inventory, any kind of shop in the game that you see, that's what that means, not to be confused. So the first thing and the really important thing in scripting is variables. So I can say local x equals 1. And now if I want to see what x equals, I can say print x. And it's not going to show me x, it's going to show me 1, because that's what x equals. So if I go to test, and get used to this because you're going to be testing a lot when you're scripting, you can run the server and view the output, and you see 1, which is in our script right here, local x equals 1. You can do a lot of things with variables. Variables make things super easy and clean. So kind of what we mentioned earlier with parents and children of the game. If you want to reference something super quickly, you're going to say local name of the variable. So we'll say name equals game. So if you want pretty much to access any kind of instance in the game, whether it's in the workspace, whether it's in server script service, server storage, replicated storage, anything like that, you need to start with game right here, because this is the ultimate parent of everything in the place. That's never going to change. Then if you want the workspace, you can say workspace, and the studio is great about this. It'll help you out as you start typing what you want. It will show you possible options based on what you typed. You can just press enter and it will give it to you, because spelling is very important. You can't make this lowercase right here or it's not going to work. It needs to be capital W. So things like that, little details are very important, and they'll get you all the time. So we want to reference our part down here. That's in the workspace. So we say part. Now, when the game first loads in, there's no guarantee that the part will be created before this script. So if this script is loaded into the game first, before this part is in workspace, this will cause an error. So something that I do all the time, and that most scripters do all the time, is we do a small function called wait for child, parentheses, quotation, part. And what this is going to do is it's going to wait for this child to be created before assigning it to this variable. And that's very important to prevent errors. Now in a small script like this with a very simple path, I doubt there will be an error. But in the future, if you're trying to find something that's complex or stored in a area that's loaded way after the server script services, then you're going to need to do this, or you're going to get an error and you're not going to understand why. So we have our variable name, which can be anything. It could be pi, it could be xy, it could be any kind of name that you could think of. It could be that. So we're just going to call this part. Now, if you recall from earlier, part has different properties. One major property is going to be name. So one thing that we can do is change the name of our part. So if you want to access the property of an instance, or in this case a part, and an instance is just anything in the game. A script is an instance, a part is an instance, a local script is an instance. Anything with properties that you can edit and change essentially is an instance. So when we launch the game, we're going to say print x, and then we're going to say part.name equals, and now this is important because the name is a type of data called string. So you can't just say something like part1, because the game doesn't know what this is. The game is looking for a variable named part1. Up here you don't have to use quotations because the game knows that this is a variable name, but the game is looking for a string value to change the name to of this part. So you need to add quotation, and we'll call it party. This is important. You need to know the data type of the property that you're trying to change. Don't worry too much about that. It will become second nature as you go on, and the Studio has an anti-bug feature where it will tell you what kind of value is expected. So if we say, I'll show you right now, if we say party and we don't call it anything, we don't call it a string, I should say, and we say run, prints 1 because that's what x is, and it's going to say the line in which the error is, server script service dot script, which is over here, our script. Line 5, bad argument number 3 to name, string expected, got nil. So the game doesn't know how to process this because it doesn't exist. It's not a variable. So we're going to have to call it party with a string. And now you run the game, 1, and if we click on this, we see that its name has changed to party. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned a little bit about Lua scripting and the difference between a script and a local script, the parents and children in a game, and how to create variables and change properties of instances in the game. As we go further in the series, we'll go more into depth on what you can do, because you really can do anything in Roblox. It's pretty amazing. If you can look in deep enough into what different properties do, you can essentially build any kind of physics-based or visually, graphically based thing that you want. So if you liked what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe for more. Tell me what you want to see next, and see you guys next time.